Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for coming early today for our pre-concert talk prior to this afternoon's performance by the Reno Phil. I'm Chris Morrison, of course. I'm usually here for these talks, but we have a newcomer today, a person you may not know, but you're going to become well acquainted with him in the coming weeks and months, and that is Doty, the new president and CEO of the Reno Phil. Aaron, thank you for being here.
Chris, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
And congratulations on the new position.
Thank you so much. It's a great organization. It's an amazing community. We have been here for about 4 weeks and have been exploring the city. I'm here with my wife, Eileen, who is out there in the audience. So if you're sitting around her, just keep your comments about me to quiet. But lots of different types of programming for education and opera, and it was a wonderful time, but the Midwest was calling me back, although I didn't know it at the time, but the West was calling. So we had a stop-off, kind of a detour, halfway across the country when we went from DC to Michigan, and then just a few weeks ago, we got in our car. I got the trailer behind me. Eileen had the cats behind her. We have 2 cats. And we took the 5-day trek, making sure to stop off so that the cats weren't going to be too ornery. And we arrived in Reno and have just been so happy ever since.
Forgive me, by the way, if some of the questions I asked today sound like a job interview. You have the job. You needn't worry. But some of the questions that you would get from a selection committee are the sorts of questions that we might like to hear answers to as well.
Happy to share as much as I can about myself, the things that I'm excited about, and the things that we are going to be excited about doing together.
What are your initial impressions of the Reno Phil based on 2 entire weeks of being here?
Well, the organization has a long history, and I think that is in no small part to the support from the community, from all of you. You make it possible for us to deliver on the mission of the Reno Phil. And so give yourselves a hand. It is just the testament of a community in support of the arts that intrigued me about this organization, about the position, and so it made it feel like I was kind of coming home when I arrived here. So the impressions here are we're an organization that is positioned for success, that has the support of the community, and there's nothing we can't do together.
Speaking of things we can do or might do, this is a question I asked last night, but it's a more philosophical question about orchestras and their role in the community. If you go back 50 years, 75 years, orchestras existed to play music, and that was basically it. But nowadays, there's much more of an expectation that the orchestra is going to be a leader in the community in terms of being a focus of artistic collaboration, a focus of other artistic groups, a focus of community gathering, and not to mention one of the biggest parts of the Reno Phil, which is education. Do you have notions about what an orchestra can be and, if I dare use the word, should be?
It's a great question, and I will say one of the things that I kind of left out of my bio, but one of the things I'm so passionate about is education. My degree is actually in music education. My undergraduate degree is music as a music educator. And so I'm passionate about that, the Reno Phil's focus on reaching students of all ages, learners from, they talk about from here all the way to any age that people want to learn, want to experience, want to feel the joy of music together, and learn more about what it is that makes the shared human experience of music so powerful. So the education component is great. I think the important thing that we all focus on is the relevance of the orchestra in the community, and that can take many, many different shapes. You're talking about engagement, that can be smaller groups, but it can be big groups, and that's really what the Phil does that is unique. It is a large organism that can absolutely reach people in different ways, and it breathes in different textures and colors. It's really exciting. That's one of the things that I'm excited about, exploring different ways, different collaborations. I know that there have been incredible collaborations between the Museum of Art, and it's one of the things that I know we can continue to do and build excitement for not only the Phil, but the arts community in Reno as well.
I would imagine that your early weeks and maybe even months in the position are going to involve your becoming, more deeply aware of all of that stuff that is happening and all of the history. I hope you have a good memory for names too.
Oh boy.
Because you're going to be encountering a lot of new ones, probably already have.
I will have my little cheat sheet. If I meet you and I don't remember your name the second time, I promise it will be the third time. But I also have my wife, who's got a great mind for names. So between the two of us, we are listening, and we would just want to meet you all. So I will, after this, I'll kind of come around and come out into the audience and meet as many of you as I can. After shows, really look forward to meeting as many of you as possible.
One of the things that's going to be reassuring for many of us, and certainly for members of the staff of the Reno Phil, looking at your resume, you have all kinds of experience on the administrative side of music organizations. You've done kind of it all.
Well, it was an atypical trajectory to this position. It's often that there's a degree in arts management, and then you are a CFO or something like that, and then you become that CEO role. My background, as I mentioned, was as an educator. So I came into this role through operations as a personnel manager and a librarian. So I had a chance to see some of the things on the artistic side that shaped higher level operations. And then I moved into operations and then production and then direction of strategy and engagement. And so it gave me a bigger picture, and financial acumen was built and grown along the way. In 2011 was the moment that I kind of made that switch to I'm going to move into the bigger picture of the organization, and I had to step away a little bit from the operations side. It's something that still is in my heart, but I trust the team that's here. It's an amazing staff, and so I need to make sure that I empower them and trust them to do their jobs, which they do so well.
But you have deep knowledge of both the administrative and the musical side.
Yes. Yeah, and my background is as a bass player, so, go bass,
Bravo.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, I met Scott, who was one of the first people I met, our principal bassist, Scott, and it's just a wonderful person, amazing bass player, and the section is just fantastic. You're going to hear them a lot during this. It's the rumbling, it's the dance, along with the percussion. It inspires the dance that you'll hear in every piece today. So it's great to have that background, and it's important to have insight to the music and that perspective, so that I can appreciate all that goes in, all of the work of the crew and of the staff to make these performances come to life for all of you.
I don't know if you perhaps know this, but you're carrying on a fine tradition in terms of bass players and administration, because Scott Faulkner, who you just mentioned, was for 14 years, I believe, the executive director of the Reno Chamber Orchestra.
I do know that.
I worked under him for 13 of those years, so I know it well.
We had a chance to talk about that. He is really wonderful, a wonderful resource. For those of you who don't know, Scott also is the works and manages for the alumni chapter of the League Essentials in leadership, which trains the next generation of leaders. So he's just such a great resource that I have and I can bounce ideas off of, but more so he's just a wonderful person and a great musician.
Yeah. How do you imagine the collaboration between a president and CEO and a music director?
It's a very interesting question. It's a great question. So as I mentioned, I met Laura a long time ago and have thought the world of her for all of the things that she brings to this organization. It's atypical as opposed to a Fortune 500 company where you have your board and your CEO, and that's everything kind of else. The org chart goes out from there. A symphony orchestra has this two-tiered leadership structure, which is wonderful. I am a team believer, and so working with Laura has just been an amazing fit. But it's important for the organization to empower the mission, the artistic mission of the Phil. So we work together to make sure that the mission comes first, and that's why that partnership is so important.
Do you have thoughts in terms of the kinds of music that the orchestra might play?
So I trust Laura to make those artistic decisions. Of course, I have my own personal tastes, but my job as CEO is to work through and empower Laura's mission, artistic mission. That being said, she has already reached out to me to bounce ideas of things that she is interested in doing with the Phil in the future. Stay tuned. I can't tell you right now, but that's a teaser. So we're really excited about some of the plans for the Phil in the future, and so I work in service to that mission with her.
Speaking of music, the program that we're going to hear today was established before your tenure, but it makes a very splashy sort of start for your tenure.
I was sitting up in the balcony last night. It was, I guess I hope the people behind me come back because I was moving around and dancing the whole time. It was so enjoyable. You were in for such a treat, as I said before. But the movement and the feeling of the music in each piece, you'll have an arc. There's not all, you're not necessarily dancing the entire time. There are some quiet moments, some introspective moments. But overall, it is a time for you to feel this joy that comes from the music.
There was a lot of physical movement among audience members last night. So I know you may not be able to help yourself, but do be respectful of the people sitting next to you. That's the least we can ask.
Right. We want safety, no elbows or anything like that.
Right.
It's my first set of concerts here, so I don't want any injuries, please.
Some thoughts about our guest artists this time. Conductor Ramon Tebar and guitarist Rafael Aguirre, who lit it up last night.
It was incredible. Now, both of these two wonderful gentlemen are from Spain. They have Spanish music in their blood, literally, and it is something that you can sense in the work that they've done with the orchestra through this week, and will bring this presence and this perspective that's so unique. So you're going to hear, we'll save that for the talk of the for the fire. But it's great. They are both wonderful people, wonderful musicians, wonderful collaborators, and it's been a joy to have them here. Ramon is somebody who I have known of having been in the opera world. He was at Florida Grand Opera, and just a wonderful, insightful, and collaborative musician. Great with the soloists, and you are going to sense that sense of ole.
If you would like to get more of a sense of Ramon Tebar, our conductor, it happens that actually a week ago today, I interviewed him for the Reno Phil's podcast, Inside the Music. We had a nice half-hour-long conversation, personal plug, about music and his life and his background and the specific pieces that are featured on this program. Really interesting guy. And a musician's musician, the way he talks about things, he's a pianist, he accompanies singers in recital, he conducts lots of opera and lots of orchestra concerts, and he has wide experience of the orchestral repertoire, and the pieces he's conducting today, he's conducted many times before, and was super excited about it.
Exactly, and the way that he interacts with Rafael, who's our guest soloist for the Rodrigo, it's magical, and Rafael as a musician is so sensitive in a collaboration with the orchestra. You'll feel this mesh. They've only been rehearsing together for a couple of days.
Yeah, they had not met before this collaboration, although they'd followed one another in terms of their careers, but they'd never met before.
Exactly, and the orchestra just meshes so well with Rafael. It's a natural fit, and he is such a pleasant and engaging musician. He is fun. He is funny. Again, he brings joy to the music of the Rodrigo that you will hear. But I think maybe we can talk a little bit about the...
We are.
Yeah,
we'll talk about each of the three pieces.
Yes.
I will mention about Rafael that he does have a pretty considerable YouTube presence as well. So if you'd like to see more performances by him, just do a search for his name on YouTube. In terms of the music today, we're going to start in Argentina with Alberto Ginastera and the 4 dances from his early ballet Estancia. If you know about Ginastera and have encountered his music before, you'll know that sometimes he can get a little edgy, a little dissonant, a little harsh. That's not so much the case in the piece today, which is full of tunes and really evocative and very energetic.
Yeah, I mean, as I was talking about, I was dancing last night from the beginning to the end. But Estancia is just such great music, and it's we're shooting you out of a cannon from the beginning of the concert. You will feel this energy, this collective dance, and no better way of doing that than playing music from the ballet.
Yeah. One thing I will also point out, if you're a devotee of YouTube, the final movement of Estancia, the piece called Malambo, many of you, I'm sure, will know who Gustavo Dudamel is, the music director of the LA Philharmonic. He has made this set of dances from Estancia sort of a trademark of his. And this Malambo movement in particular, there are some riotous, in a good way, YouTube videos of him leading this piece, especially with the Simon Bolivar Orchestra, his young person's orchestra, that are captivating. They're kind of amazing.
Yeah, they'll be standing and moving around. They choreograph it as they're doing it. So look for it. It's just that passion, it's that joy that music can bring out of not only the musicians but all of us. And so we're really, really excited about starting that concert this way.
And then a wonderful contrast, actually, between Estancia, which is pretty big orchestra, lots of percussion, as you'll notice, lots of drums and things. And then we take a little break for the stage resetting, and you'll notice a whole bunch of musicians leaving the stage. Because for the next piece, the Fantasía para un Gentilhombre, Fantasy for a Gentleman by Joaquin Rodrigo, many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with Rodrigo and maybe his most famous piece, a perfect guitar concerto called the Concierto de Aranjuez, which has been, I think it's probably the most popular guitar concerto in the world.
That second movement especially, that you really, it's a powerful, powerful piece. But this is also one of his most celebrated works, and
it'd be number 2 to the Concierto, I suspect, in terms of popularity.
Completely agree, and it's just, it's a showcase for the guitar. It actually, I would say, it probably showcases the guitar more as opposed to a melody of, the melody within the Concerto de Aranjuez, so.
But he calls for a much scaled back orchestra. He's writing this, Rodrigo is in 1954, I believe, for the great Andres Segovia, who was, in terms of music history with the guitar and guitar-like instruments like the lute, the guitar was very popular back in the Renaissance and into the Baroque era, kind of went through a period in the classical era, era of Haydn and Mozart and Beethoven, and through the 19th century, basically, where there was a little guitar music, but the guitar had more or less disappeared from the classical music world pretty much until Segovia came along. And he's one of those people who, back in his heyday, he was a one-name person, Segovia. That's all you really needed to hear. And even if you weren't particularly a classical music fan, if you had a record collection, you'd probably have a Segovia record. And Rodrigo wrote this piece for Segovia in a time when amplification of the guitar was not commonplace. So Segovia, just to make the guitar be heard a little bit better, scales back the orchestra way down to strings and just like 5 or 6 other instruments.
Yeah, and it would have been before a time where there wouldn't have been necessarily, may have been, but not necessarily steel strings on the violin.
Right.
So we, of course, that was a time when violins would have been using gut strings, and so our musicians are using predominantly steel string instruments, and that also increases the size. So Rafael will have a microphone which helps to balance things out. You will have no problem hearing him, I guarantee it. But I also think if he turned off, if for some reason the mics went out, you could still hear him because he brings the sound out of the instrument so amazingly.
One of the other noteworthy things about this, I was mentioning the contrast between Ginastera, which is big and lively and raucous and fun, with some tender and quiet and very beautiful moments, but mostly highly energetic. And for the Rodrigo, the mood changes pretty considerably. Rodrigo took his inspiration, in fact, borrowed the melodies that are the basis for this piece from a Renaissance-era composer for the guitar and guitarist named Gaspar Sanz. And so you almost feel as though you were transported back to Renaissance times with this music, because basically Gaspar Sanz is writing Renaissance-era dance tunes, and Rodrigo takes them and expands on them, brings the orchestra into the mix, and it's kind of a captivating piece.
Very, very much so. There's, as I mentioned, there's dance, the strumming, you get the flamenco kind of feel of it that was inspired by Segovia because of all that he brought to the instrument. I mean, he was really the forerunner, and all of the guitarists now owe that homage to him. But it is so wonderful to hear those tender moments too. To your point, you hear that just contemplative side of
very soulful music.
Yeah.
And then we go back in the other direction a little bit for the final piece, which is the complete ballet, The Three-Cornered Hat, El Sombrero de Tres Picos, by Manuel de Falla. The dances that de Falla extracted, he took 2 suites of dances out of the ballet, and they've been pretty commonly performed by orchestras. You don't get a chance, and this is a fortunate chance for you today, you don't often get a chance to hear the entire ballet with the dances in place where they're supposed to be. And talk about Spanish music. And that's what de Falla was all about. He was one of those composers who really wanted to define a sound for his country. He was very self-conscious about it. And so if you're talking Spanish music, de Falla is a good place to start.
Exactly. You are going to hear, from the get-go, you're going to hear the castanets. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard as present a sound of castanets as I heard last night. And so I know the percussionists are up to the task to deliver that excitement again, but you get that feeling right away. And then, of course, you hear the orchestra, they get a chance to test out their lyricism as well. And they're not necessarily singing, but they're going to give you that ole in a way that Ramon worked with them to give that true Spanish flair of what ole really is. So listen for that as well.
Orchestra members don't get to clap and shout very often, but they do today. And it's a great way to start this ballet, which is pure musical storytelling, lots of dance elements. And one thing it hadn't occurred to me until listening last night, but you might be aware of the fact that Spanish music has inspired a lot of composers over the years, including composers from outside of Spain. People like Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov and Mikhail Glinka in Russia are writing Spanish-inspired pieces. Franz Liszt, the great Hungarian composer and pianist, wrote a Spanish rhapsody for piano. But the Spanish influence was particularly big in France. And if you've encountered the music of Claude Debussy and Maurice Ravel, they both wrote lots of Spain-inspired pieces. It hadn't occurred to me that the influence could run the other way too, though. But de Falla studied and spent a lot of time in Paris. And along with all of the Spanish dance music and the lively rhythms from Spain, you also get a little hint of French Impressionist sounds, which makes the sort of sound of the orchestra really lush and wonderful.
Really, it's so full. You're exactly right. I will also comment that there is one very important Germanic quote towards we get to the end, so you'll have to wait through it. Again, it's a teaser, we're not going to tell you, but this motive is probably the most famous 4-note motive in all of orchestral music, so be on the lookout for it. It's played by the horn, so you'll know. There will be no mistaking it, and it is meant as a little bit of a joke, so it's okay to smile. At a concert, believe it or not, you can laugh, you can enjoy along with the performers.
There were actually a few moments of humor in de Falla.
Indeed.
And the audience last night was not shy about laughing and chuckling, so please feel free. Another thing, this is an anecdote from last night, which was kind of meaningful, it seemed to me. It just happened that I was sitting behind a family of 4 last night, husband and wife and 2 teenage daughters. And they had never been to a Reno Phil performance before. They had heard the Phil at 4th of July concerts and that sort of thing, but they hadn't actually come to a regular season concert here before. And boy, were they into it. I mean, they were tapping on one another, tapping on themselves. You could see the legs going. They came mostly because it was the Spanish theme and the guitar, because the dad in the family is an amateur classical guitarist. But after the concert, one of the daughters made an observation that was occurring to me actually too during the music, which is this music, all of this music in this concert is really visual. It evokes a time and a place and an action. If you're into letting your imagination run wild with music, this is a great concert for you, because you get evocations of the countryside in the bustling city in Ginastera. You're transported back to a Renaissance court with Rodrigo, and right into the middle of Spain with Defia. And there are coloristic little things. If you read my summary of the plot in the program notes, you'll see, for instance, that one of the plot elements in the Three-Cornered Hat is the miller trying to teach his bird to tell time. And you hear the bird in the orchestra, and you won't probably be able to mistake it for anything else. And there are lots of other little coloristic details. And the daughter that I'm talking about so loved, she didn't read the program notes, she was just allowing her own imagination to go. And she said all of the music was filling her with images and storytelling. And that was the thing that actually Ramon, our guest conductor, emphasized in my interview with him, was the storytelling aspect of this entire concert.
It's so true, it's so perceptive, and I'm so glad to hear an account from an audience member with that. I will also give a plug for Chris's program notes. They're excellent. I've read program notes across this country. He does a phenomenal job, so we're lucky to have you, Chris.
Thank you very much. But thank you. But if you don't want to know too much about the music, don't read them until you get home tonight, or wait until tomorrow. But there is a lot to say about this music, and what a great program that I think it was Laura, in collaboration with Ramon, came up with this program of music from Spain and Argentina, and so colorful.
It's true, yeah. We're again, you're in for a treat. Don't elbow your neighbors. We'll go through the bullet points of what not to do. But the thing that you should feel free to do is enjoy, dance in your heart, sing along in your mind, and envision what it is that the orchestra is conveying through this amazing program of Spanish music.
And you've got we all actually have some real highlights coming up too the rest of the season. We've got George Gershwin music coming up in a couple of months. We've got the great Shostakovich Fifth Symphony in less than a month. We have the Mahler Fifth Symphony, and you might have seen advertisements for it already, the music of John Williams coming up in June. And
so I want to take this moment to reassure you, if you haven't yet got your John Williams tickets yet, because the June 1st performance it's almost sold out. There's a few tickets left for that. But we've added an extra concert on that day because people have been very, very much excited about it. So as we were getting closer and closer, this was in, I think, my second day on the job. We were looking at the prospect of adding an extra concert, and we have just floated out that information. So this next week, you can look forward to make sure you get your tickets if you don't already have them. We're talking about a composer, we think about ballet music and opera music and representing characters with different motives.
Yeah.
That is John Williams in a nutshell. He has borrowed that tradition from Wagner and other composers and brought it to us in this generation. If you think about Darth Vader, you automatically, I saw the music above your head right now. Everybody knows what you're hearing when you say that, because it's a motive that connects the music to a character, and that's the genius of John Williams. So we're excited to share that. You were talking about another composer that has that motive, and that's Mahler.
Yeah.
That Mahler 5 is going to be fantastic. It's immense. It's
yeah, that's the big Reno Phil.
It's exactly right. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season entirely, but really excited to share it with all of you.
Once again, Aaron, welcome to Reno. Congratulations on the new job, and thank you for taking part in the talk today. And thanks to all of you for coming so early. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
Enjoy
Chris.
the music today.